What's up, night owls? Welcome back to Demon Sleep. Real quick, drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from tonight. I personally read every single one of them, and honestly, it makes my day seeing you all from around the world. If these dark tailies help you drift off or just escape reality for a bit, smash that like button and subscribe, but only if you think we've earned it. No pressure. Alright, lights off, rain on, blankets up. Let's dive into tonight's nightmare fuel. In 2019, a woman woke up and couldn't move. That's not the scary part. What she saw standing in her doorway was a tall figure, black as midnight, wearing a fedora. She'd never heard of him before, never read about him online, never watched a video. But she described him exactly the way thousands of others have. Same height, same hat, same presence, different countries, different decades, same entity. His name, the Hat Man. And if you've seen him, you know exactly who I'm talking about. That shadow figure that doesn't quite move like a shadow should. The one that watches you from the corner of your room when you're paralyzed in bed, unable to scream, unable to move, barely able to breathe. But here's what'll make your blood run cold. He's not a dream. He's not a hallucination. He's something else entirely. I've spent 6 months researching this entity. I've interviewed 47 people who have seen him. I've analyzed thousands of reports spanning back to the 1950s. And what I've discovered will change everything you think you know about sleep paralysis, shadow people, and what watches us in the dark. Because the Hat Man isn't random. He chooses his victims. And there's a pattern to who he appears to. This is the most comprehensive investigation into the Hat Man phenomenon ever attempted. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some people who have seen him refuse to sleep alone ever again. Why children draw him before they know his name. Why skeptics who have encountered him become believers overnight. And why, after decades of sightings, he's appearing more frequently than ever before. Let me take you back to 1952, a small town in Ohio. A woman named Dorothy Summers woke up at 3:17 a.m. She documented everything in her diary the next morning, and her granddaughter sent me the scans. I couldn't move, she wrote. My arms were lead, my legs wouldn't respond, but my eyes worked fine, too fine, because standing at the foot of my bed was a man made of shadow. He wore a wide-brimmed hat. And even though I couldn't see his face, I knew he was staring at me. Dorothy had never experienced sleep paralysis before. She didn't know what it was. There was no internet to search, no forums to post on, no videos explaining the phenomenon. She thought she was losing her mind. She told her husband. He laughed it off. A bad dream, he said, your imagination. But the Hat Man came back 3 more times that month. Same position, same hat, same suffocating presence. Now here's what's chilling. In 1954 in Sydney, Australia, a man named Robert Chen experienced the exact same thing. Woke up paralyzed, saw a shadow figure in a fedora. Robert had never met Dorothy, never heard her story, lived on the opposite side of the planet, but his description, identical, down to the way the Hat Man tilted his head. The way he seemed to absorb light around him, the overwhelming feeling that this thing wasn't human. Fast forward to 2001. The internet exists now. People start comparing notes, and that's when the real terror begins, because they realize they're not alone. Hundreds of people from every continent, every background, every age group have seen the same figure, the same hat, the same cold presence. They start calling him the Hat Man, and the reports keep flooding in. Sarah Martinez contacted me 3 weeks ago. She's 28, works as a teacher in New Mexico, and she's terrified to close her eyes. I saw him for the first time when I was 7, she told me over video call, her hands shaking. My parents thought I had nightmares, but I knew he was real. I could smell him, like burnt metal and old paper. That's not something a 7-year-old makes up. Here's where it gets disturbing. Sarah drew pictures of him as a child. Her mother kept them. I asked her to send them to me. When I opened the file, I felt my skin crawl, because I'd seen these exact drawings before from other witnesses. Different people, different countries, different time periods, but the drawings nearly identical. A tall figure, a wide-brimmed hat, no face, just darkness where features should be. The last time I saw him was 2 months ago, Sarah continued. I'm an adult now. I thought I'd outgrown him, but I woke up around 2 a.m. and there he was, standing in my closet doorway, and this time was different. He moved closer, not walking, gliding like he was sliding across the floor. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. He got within 3 feet of my bed and just stopped, watching, always watching. I asked Sarah a crucial question. Had anything stressful happened in her life recently? She went quiet for a long moment. My grandmother died, she whispered, the week before he came back. And that's when I noticed the pattern, because Sarah isn't the only one. The Hat Man appears during times of grief, trauma, stress, and transition. He feeds on vulnerability, or maybe he's drawn to it. Marcus Webb is a neurologist, 42 years old, doesn't believe in the paranormal, or at least he didn't until last year. I was going through a divorce, he told me during our phone interview. Stress levels were through the roof. One night I woke up paralyzed. Classic sleep paralysis, right? I've studied it, I know the science. But then I saw him standing next to my dresser, the Hat Man, and every rational explanation in my brain just vanished. Marcus tried to apply his medical knowledge to explain it away. A hypnagogic hallucination, the brain's interpretation of a coat rack in the dark, but the Hat Man moved. He turned his head toward me, Marcus said, his professional composure cracking. Slowly, deliberately, and even though I couldn't see eyes, I felt his gaze. It was like ice water in my veins. I'm a doctor. I've seen death. I've held dying patients' hands. But nothing has ever made me feel like that. What terrified Marcus most wasn't the figure itself. It was what happened after. The paralysis wore off after maybe 30 seconds. I could move again. I jumped out of bed, turned on every light in the room. He was gone, but here's the thing that keeps me up at night. My cat was in the room with me, and she was staring at the exact spot where the Hat Man had been standing, hissing, back arched, pupils dilated. She saw him too. Animals don't hallucinate sleep paralysis. They don't experience hypnagogic states the way humans do. So how do we explain Marcus's cat reacting to something that supposedly wasn't there? I've collected 23 similar reports. Dogs barking at empty corners, cats refusing to enter rooms, birds going silent. The Hat Man isn't just visible to paralyzed humans. Something about him affects the environment itself. Let me tell you about the Riverside incident. November 2018, Riverside, California, a college dormitory. 4 students in separate rooms on different floors all experienced the Hat Man on the same night. They didn't know each other well, hadn't discussed nightmares or sleep paralysis. But the next morning, during breakfast in the dining hall, one of them mentioned seeing a shadow figure in a hat. The other 3 went silent. Then they all started talking at once. I tracked down all 4 students. Emma, the first to speak up, told me what happened. We compared notes, same night, same time, around 3:30 a.m. We all woke up paralyzed. We all saw him, but here's what freaked us out. We saw him in different locations. I saw him at the foot of my bed. Jake saw him in his closet. Melissa saw him by her window. Ryan saw him in his hallway, but we all felt the same thing, pure dread, like we were being evaluated, judged. Campus security reviewed the footage from that night. I obtained the report through a Freedom of Information request. Between 3:15 a.m. and 3:45 a.m., multiple motion sensors triggered in the dormitory, but the cameras showed nothing, just empty hallways, empty stairwells, yet the sensors detected movement, large movement, something human-sized walking through the building. The security guard on duty that night quit the next week. He refused to talk to me. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. One of the students, Ryan, had a sleep tracking app on his phone. It records audio throughout the night to monitor for snoring or sleep talking. I asked him to send me the recording from that night. For the first 3 hours, nothing unusual. Normal breathing, occasional shifting. Then at 3:29 a.m., there's a sound. Not a voice, not mechanical, like air being pulled through a narrow space. A wheezing, breathing sound that doesn't match Ryan's. Something else was in that room. Dr. Alina Price is a sleep researcher who's been studying parasomnia for 15 years. She's published papers, given lectures, explained sleep paralysis to thousands of patients, but she's never gone public with what I'm about to tell you. The Hat Man sightings don't follow typical hallucination patterns, she told me in her university office after I'd signed 3 different NDAs. Hallucinations should be random, unique to each person's brain. But the Hat Man is consistent across demographics, cultures, and time periods. That's not how the human mind works. Dr. Price showed me her research. She's collected data from 1,847 sleep paralysis sufferers over the past decade. Of those, 412 reported seeing a shadow figure. And of those 412, an astonishing 287 described the same entity, the Hat Man. Same height between 6 and 7 feet. Same build, thin but somehow imposing. Same hat, wide-brimmed, fedora style. Same behavior, standing, watching, occasionally moving closer. The statistical probability of this being coincidence, virtually 0. I've tried to publish these findings, she said, frustration evident in her voice. But journals won't touch it. It doesn't fit the accepted model of sleep paralysis. It suggests something else is happening, something we can't explain with neuroscience alone. My colleagues think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have, but the data doesn't lie. These people are seeing something real, or at least something real enough to leave identical impressions on hundreds of different brains. Then Dr. Price told me something that changed everything. I saw him too, she whispered, glancing at her office door to make sure it was closed. 6 months ago, after my father's funeral, I woke up paralyzed, and there he was, standing at my bedroom window. I knew immediately who it was, and all my scientific training meant nothing in that moment, because I was just another terrified person, frozen in bed, staring at something that shouldn't exist. The online forums dedicated to the Hat Man are extensive and disturbing. I've spent weeks reading through thousands of posts, and certain themes keep emerging. The first, he comes in threes, not always, but often enough to form a pattern. People see him once and think it's a one-time event. Then he comes back within a few weeks, then again. After the 3rd visit, he either stops completely or increases in frequency. There seems to be no middle ground. User Night Terror 1993 posted this in 2015. First time was scary. Second time was worse. Third time he got closer, close enough that I could have touched him if I could move. I haven't seen him since, but I know he's not gone. He's waiting. I feel watched all the time now, even during the day, especially in the late afternoon when the shadows get long. This comment has 847 replies, most of them saying the same thing. Me too. Another recurring theme, the Hat Man appears before major life events, deaths, accidents, diagnosis of serious illnesses, job losses, divorces. It's like he's a herald, a warning, or maybe he's drawn to these moments like a moth to flame. User Shadow Seeker 2008 wrote, I saw him 3 weeks before my mom's stroke. I saw him a week before my car accident. I saw him the night before I got fired. Now every time I see him, I brace for impact. Something bad is coming. He's never wrong. But the most chilling posts are from the children, or rather from parents describing what their children say. My 5-year-old daughter told me about the man in the hat who visits her room, wrote user Scared Mom 2021. She says he doesn't talk, he just watches. She's not scared of him exactly. She says he's sad. I didn't believe her until I experienced sleep paralysis for the first time last month. And there he was, in my daughter's doorway. The same figure she'd been describing for months. She was right. He does look sad. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself to sleep at night. Let me tell you about the photographs. Because yes, people have tried to photograph him. Most attempts fail. Cameras malfunction. Phones die, but there are exceptions. I've obtained 3 photographs that allegedly show the Hat Man. The first was taken in 2003 by a teenager in Florida using a disposable camera. She set it up with a timer, hopping to catch proof of her sleep paralysis visitor. The photo shows her bedroom, empty, except for one detail. In the corner near the closet, there's a darkness that doesn't match the rest of the shadows. It's denser, more solid, and if you look closely, you can see the outline of a brim. The second photograph is from 2011. A man in Washington state set up a night vision camera after experiencing the Hat Man multiple times. He captured something, not a clear image, but a shape. A human-shaped void where the night vision should have picked up heat signature. No heat, just cold. The camera's temperature sensor recorded a drop of 15 degrees in that specific spot. Nowhere else in the room, just where the figure stood. The third photograph is the one that keeps me up at night. It was taken in 2019 in a hospital room. A woman recovering from surgery set up her phone to record herself sleeping, hopping to catch evidence of her sleep apnea. Instead, she caught something else. At 3:42 a.m., a shadow appears in the frame. It's standing next to her hospital bed. The footage runs for 17 seconds before the phone's battery dies instantly, dropping from 67% to 0. In those 17 seconds, the shadow doesn't move. But if you watch carefully, you can see the woman's vital signs monitor in the background. Her heart rate spikes from 72 to 134, while she's still asleep. I had all 3 images analyzed by a forensic photo expert. His conclusion: these haven't been digitally manipulated. Whatever was captured, it was there at the time the photos were taken. But that doesn't mean it's paranormal. It could be a photography artifact, a trick of light and shadow, or equipment malfunction. Then, off the record, he told me something else. I've been analyzing photos for 20 years. I've never seen shadows behave like this. Whatever it is, it absorbs light in a way that shouldn't be physically possible. Cultural perspectives on the Hat Man are fascinating and terrifying in equal measure, because he's not just an American phenomenon, he's global. In Japan, witnesses describe a figure they call Boshi no Atoko, the Hat Man. Same description, same behavior. In Germany, reports date back to the 1930s describing Der Hutman. In Brazil, he's known as O Homem do Chapéu. Different languages, different cultures, same entity. I spoke with Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a folklorist at Tokyo University. The interesting aspect is that Boshi no Atoko appears in Japanese accounts before widespread internet use, she explained. We have documented cases from the 1970s, people who had no exposure to Western shadow figure lore, yet their descriptions match perfectly. This suggests either a universal human experience or something else, something that transcends cultural boundaries. In Mexican culture, some believe the Hat Man is related to La Sombra, a shadow entity from folklore. But here's what's disturbing. Traditional La Sombra stories don't mention a hat. That detail only appears in modern accounts, after the Hat Man reports started spreading online. Did the folklore evolve to match contemporary experiences? Or did something ancient start manifesting in a new form? The most chilling cultural connection comes from Native American traditions. I interviewed a Navajo elder named Thomas Begay with his permission to share this. My grandfather told me about the shadow with the wide hat, he said. This was in the 1940s, long before any of this internet stuff. He said it was a warning. When you see him, death is nearby. Not always your death, but death. He marks those touched by loss. Thomas paused, looking out his window. I saw him myself in 1987. My wife passed away 2 weeks later. He knows. Somehow, he always knows. Let's talk about the science, or rather the lack of it. Sleep paralysis is well documented. It happens when your mind wakes up before your body. Your brain is conscious, but your muscles are still in REM sleep paralysis mode. This creates a perfect storm for hallucinations. Your brain, confused by the mismatch between mental and physical states, fills in the blanks with terrifying imagery. That's the official explanation. And for most sleep paralysis experiences, it fits perfectly. The Hat Man doesn't fit. Dr. Richard Morrison, a neuroscientist I interviewed, put it this way. If sleep paralysis hallucinations were purely brain-generated, we'd expect infinite variety. Your brain would draw from your personal fears, your cultural background, your recent experiences. We'd see demons in religious communities, aliens in sci-fi fans, monsters in horror enthusiasts. And we do see all of that. But we also see the Hat Man, consistently, across all demographics. That's the anomaly. Dr. Morrison proposed a hypothesis. What if the paralyzed brain is more receptive to something? What if in that state between waking and sleeping, we're tuned to a frequency we normally can't perceive? It sounds like pseudoscience, I know, but we've discovered so many things about consciousness that seemed impossible 20 years ago. Maybe sleep paralysis isn't just a glitch in our neurology. Maybe it's a doorway, and the Hat Man is what's on the other side. The counterargument is simple and logical. With millions of people experiencing sleep paralysis, and with the internet allowing us to share experiences instantly, it's natural that a common archetype would emerge. The Hat Man is just the current iteration of the shadow person phenomenon, refined through collective storytelling into a specific image. We see him because we expect to see him. Our brains deliver what our culture has primed us to perceive. That's the skeptical view. And it makes perfect sense. Except for one problem, the reports that came before the internet, before the forums, before anyone knew they were supposed to see a man in a hat. Amanda Liu contacted me with a story that defies easy explanation. She's 19, a college student, and she's never experienced sleep paralysis. But her roommate has, multiple times. Katie would wake up terrified, Amanda told me. She described this shadow man in a hat. I thought she was having nightmares. I was sympathetic but skeptical. Then one night I woke up for no reason, just opened my eyes. It was 3 a.m. and I saw him. Here's the crucial detail. Amanda wasn't paralyzed. She could move freely. She sat up in bed. The Hat Man was standing between her bed and Katie's bed. He turned to look at me, Amanda said, her voice barely a whisper. I could move, I could speak, I could have screamed, but I didn't. I just stared at him, and he stared back. Then he slowly turned back to Katie, who was frozen in her bed, eyes wide, unable to move. He was there for her, not me. I was just witnessing it. Amanda described the experience in vivid detail. The way the shadow seemed to have depth and dimension. The way it absorbed the light from their nightlight. The feeling of overwhelming dread that filled the room. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, she said. Then he just faded, not walked away, not disappeared suddenly, just gradually became less solid until he was gone. Katie regained movement a few seconds later. We stayed up the rest of the night with all the lights on. This account is significant because it suggests the Hat Man isn't purely a hallucination experienced only by the paralyzed person. Amanda was awake, alert, and mobile. She has no history of sleep disorders or hallucinations, yet she saw exactly what her roommate had been describing for weeks. I've collected 7 similar reports. People who weren't experiencing sleep paralysis but witnessed the Hat Man while someone nearby was paralyzed. What does that mean? If he's a hallucination, how can 2 people see the same one? The progression reports are the most disturbing category in my research. These are witnesses who report that the Hat Man's behavior has changed over multiple encounters. First visit, standing in a corner or doorway. Second visit, standing closer. Third visit, standing right next to the bed. Fourth visit, that's where it gets truly terrifying, because some people report that he touches them. Jennifer Torres experienced this escalation. The first 3 times he just watched, she told me during our video interview. Her hands were shaking. The 4th time I felt pressure on my chest, like a hand pressing down. I still couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. The pressure increased. I thought I was going to die. Then suddenly it stopped and he was gone. I could move again. There were no marks on my skin, but I could still feel where he touched me, like a cold spot that took hours to warm up. Well, Jennifer isn't alone. I've documented 34 cases of people reporting physical sensations during Hat Man encounters. Most describe cold, intense, penetrating cold that doesn't match the room temperature. Some report pressure. A few report pain. One witness described feeling like frozen fingers grabbing her ankle. Another felt ice water being poured down his spine. These aren't typical sleep paralysis symptoms. Sleep paralysis usually involves chest pressure from breathing difficulty, not localized cold or targeted sensations. But here's what really disturbs me. 3 witnesses reported the same thing independently. After the encounter, they found unexplained marks, not injuries exactly, more like shadows. Jennifer showed me a photograph of her arm taken the morning after her 4th encounter. There on her forearm was a dark discoloration, not a bruise. The skin wasn't damaged, but it was darker, like the pigmentation had changed. It faded over 3 days. Her doctor had no explanation. Said it was probably just lighting in the photograph. But Jennifer knows what she saw, what she felt, and what it left behind. There's a subset of witnesses who claim to have communicated with the Hat Man. Not verbally. He never speaks, but through some form of direct mental contact. This is where my research enters territory that even I find hard to believe. But I'm documenting everything, no matter how unlikely it seems. Because if even one of these accounts is genuine, it changes everything we think we know. Michael Stevens is a 34-year-old software engineer. Analytical, skeptical, not prone to flights of fancy. During my 3rd encounter, something changed, he told me. I was paralyzed as usual. He was standing at the foot of my bed, and then, I don't know how to describe this. I heard him, not with my ears, in my head, like thoughts that weren't mine. And what he communicated was simple. You're not ready yet. That's it. 4 words. And then he was gone. Not ready for what? Michael doesn't know. He's tried to make sense of it for 2 years now. I've considered every possibility, he said. Dream logic bleeding into a waking state. My brain creating meaning from a random firing of neurons, but it felt intentional, deliberate, like he was delivering a message. And the weirdest part, I haven't seen him since. It's been 2 years. Whatever I wasn't ready for, maybe I'm still not ready, or maybe I avoided it. I don't know which possibility scares me more. Other witnesses report similar mental impressions. He's watching. They're coming. Remember, it's almost time. Fragmentary phrases that don't form a coherent narrative. Are these genuine communications from an external entity, or are they the brain's attempt to assign meaning to a terrifying experience? I've consulted with psychiatrists, neurologists, and even a few parapsychologists. No one has a definitive answer. But here's what makes me pause. Some of these messages have proven predicted. Two witnesses reported the Hat Man communicating soon or close during their encounters. Both experienced major life events within a month. One received a cancer diagnosis. The other lost a parent in a car accident. Coincidence? Probably. The brain looking for patterns that aren't there. Most likely. But the witnesses don't think so. They believe the Hat Man knew what was coming. And they believe he was trying to warn them. The medication angle is something I've been investigating for months. Because here's a disturbing pattern. Many Hat Man witnesses were taking psychiatric medications around the time of their encounters. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, sleep aids. Does this mean the Hat Man is just a side effect? A chemically induced hallucination? The pharmaceutical companies would certainly prefer that explanation. I compiled data from 200 witnesses. Of those, 87 were taking some form of psychiatric medication. That's 43.5%, higher than the general population, but not dramatically so. But here's what's interesting. The type of medication doesn't correlate with sightings. SSRIs, benzodiazepines, tricyclics, atypical antipsychotics, all different mechanisms of action, all different effects on brain chemistry. Yet witnesses on all these different medications report seeing the same entity. If it were a drug-induced hallucination, we'd expect the specific drug to influence the specific hallucination. But we don't see that pattern. Dr. Patricia Nguyen, a psychopharmacologist, reviewed my data. This is unusual, she admitted. When medications cause hallucinations, they're typically drug-specific. Certain antidepressants might cause visual distortions. Some sleep aids can cause complex hallucinations. But we don't see a single, consistent hallucination across multiple drug classes with different mechanisms. That's not how pharmacology works. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Which suggests either there's something else at play, or we're looking at a cultural phenomenon that manifests during drug-altered states. But the most disturbing cases are the ones where medication seems to increase encounters rather than cause them. Several witnesses reported seeing the Hat Man before starting medication, then experiencing an increase in frequency after beginning treatment. Jessica Palmer saw him twice in her 20s, then nothing for 15 years. At 38, she started taking an SSRI for anxiety. Within 2 weeks, the Hat Man returned. She saw him 5 times in 3 months. She stopped the medication. The encounter stopped too. It was like the medication made me more visible to him, she told me, like it thinned some barrier between us. Geographic clusters are another piece of this puzzle. While Hat Man sightings occur worldwide, certain locations have higher concentrations of reports. Hospitals, hotels, old houses, places where many people have experienced trauma, fear, or death. Is the Hat Man drawn to these locations? Or are people in these locations more likely to experience sleep paralysis due to environmental factors? I investigated one particular hotel in Louisiana. The owner, who requested I not name the establishment, told me about the problem. With a capital P, we've had complaints for years, she said. Guests waking up terrified, describing the same figure, a shadow man in a hat. It's always room 217 or 218, sometimes 315. We've renovated, changed the mattresses, brought in priests, psychics, you name it. Nothing works. The sightings continue. I stayed in room 217. Nothing happened the first night, or the second. On the third night at 2:47 a.m., I woke up paralyzed. And there he was, standing in the corner where the desk meets the wall. I'd read hundreds of accounts, interviewed dozens of witnesses. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. The fear is primal, overwhelming. Every instinct screaming danger while your body refuses to respond. He stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably 20 seconds. Then he faded. I could move again. I immediately wrote down everything I could remember, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. What did I experience? A genuine paranormal encounter? Or did my subconscious, primed by months of research and surrounded by witnesses' accounts, manufacture exactly what I expected to see? I'm supposed to be the objective investigator, the rational analyst, but I can't be objective anymore because I know how it feels. That crushing presence, that absolute certainty you're in the presence of something that shouldn't exist. I understand now why witnesses become believers overnight. Why skeptics abandon their skepticism. Because when you're frozen in bed, staring at the Hat Man, all the logic in the world doesn't matter. Only survival. Let me tell you what happened to Daniel Kim, because his case is the one that haunts me most. Daniel is 41, a school teacher in Oregon, married with 2 kids. No history of mental illness, no drug use, no underlying health conditions. The Hat Man appeared to him for the first time in January 2023. Standard encounter. Paralyzed, terrified, shadow figure watching from the closet. Daniel wrote it off as a bad dream, stress from work, nothing more. The Hat Man came back 3 more times over the next 2 months, each time getting closer. 4th visit, he was standing right next to the bed. Daniel could have reached out and touched him if he could move. That's when I started researching, Daniel told me. Found all the forums, all the accounts, realized I wasn't alone. That should have been comforting. It wasn't, because I read about the progression, how he gets closer, how some people report physical contact, and I thought, what comes after that? Daniel decided to fight back. He set up cameras, kept a dream journal, started taking sleep supplements, avoided stress. Did everything the online community suggested. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. He thought maybe it was over. Then came the night that changed everything. He woke up paralyzed. The Hat Man wasn't in the room. He was on top of him, hovering over the bed, leaning down, face, if you could call it a face, inches from Daniel's. And Daniel felt something he'd never felt before. Not fear, connection. I know how insane this sounds, Daniel said, tears streaming down his face during our video call. But in that moment I understood. He wasn't there to hurt me, he was there to show me, and what he showed me was everything, my life, every moment, every choice, every consequence. It was like seeing my existence from outside all at once. And I knew that I was going to die, not someday, soon. That's what he came to tell me. That's what all the visits were building toward. He was preparing me. Before I continue Daniel's story, I need to know something. If you're still watching this, type "I'm still watching" in the comments. Because what comes next is going to test your belief system. It tested mine. And I need to know there are people out there willing to hear the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's terrifying. Daniel Kim died 6 weeks after our interview. Heart attack. He was 41. No history of heart disease, no warning signs. The doctors called it a tragic anomaly, sudden cardiac death. It happens, they said. Rare but not impossible. His wife called me the day after. She was barely coherent, but she managed to tell me one thing. The night before he died, Daniel woke up screaming. She'd never heard him scream like that. When he finally calmed down enough to speak, he said he was here, the Hat Man, and this time he wasn't alone. I attended Daniel's funeral, spoke with his family, his closest friends. None of them knew about the Hat Man. He kept it secret from everyone except me. Why? Because I didn't want them to think I was crazy, he told me during our interview. And because, I don't know, it felt private, personal, like he was mine alone. His wife showed me his journal. The last entry was dated the night before his death. It read, "He's coming for me tonight. I can feel it. This is the last time. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm ready." Was Daniel's death natural, a tragic coincidence, or did the Hat Man somehow cause it? I've been investigating this for months and I can't find a rational answer. The doctors insist his heart just stopped. Young, healthy hearts sometimes do, but the timing, the premonition, the progression of encounters building toward this final moment, it's too perfect, too deliberate, and it's not the only case. I've identified 7 other witnesses who died within 3 months of their final Hat Man encounter. All sudden, all unexpected, all ruled natural causes or accidents. 3 heart attacks, 2 strokes, 1 car accident where the driver apparently blacked out, 1 fell downstairs. No foul play, no suspicious circumstances, just death, coming right on schedule, exactly when the Hat Man seemed to predict it would. If these are coincidences, they're the most disturbing coincidences I've ever encountered in my life. The children's accounts are what finally broke my scientific detachment, because children describe the Hat Man before they have language for what they're experiencing, before cultural contamination, before they could have been influenced by internet forums or horror stories. They just see him, and their descriptions are remarkably consistent with adult reports. I interviewed the parents of 8 children who reported seeing the Hat Man, ages ranging from 4 to 10. None of them knew each other. None had been exposed to Hat Man content online. Their parents hadn't discussed sleep paralysis with them, yet all 8 children described the same figure. The tall, dark man with a hat. One 4-year-old girl called him the sad Hat Man. When asked why he was sad, she said, because he can't go home. 7-year-old Mason drew pictures of him without being prompted. His mother found the drawings hidden in his closet. I asked him why he drew them, she told me. He said the Hat Man told him to, not out loud, but in his head. The Hat Man wanted Mason to remember what he looked like, so when the time came, Mason would recognize him. The time for what? Mason couldn't explain, or wouldn't. He just said the Hat Man was waiting, always waiting. But here's what's truly disturbing. 3 of these children reported that the Hat Man showed them things, visions, premonitions. 6-year-old Emma told her parents she saw the bad thing that's going to happen to Grandpa. 2 weeks later, her grandfather had a major stroke. 9-year-old Jacob told his mother he saw a big fire in a vision given by the Hat Man. A week later, a neighbor's house burned down. Coincidence? Vague predictions that could apply to any future event. Maybe. But the children swear the visions were specific, detailed, and terrifyingly accurate. I need to tell you about the patterns I've discovered in my data, because there are patterns, clear ones, and they suggest this isn't random. The Hat Man doesn't appear to just anyone at any time. There are triggers, conditions that make an encounter more likely. Understanding these could save lives, or at least save people from the absolute terror of an unprepared encounter. Pattern 1. Grief and loss. 67% of witnesses experienced a significant loss within 6 months before their first encounter. Death of a loved one, divorce, job loss, serious illness diagnosis. The Hat Man appears during emotional vulnerability. Pattern 2. Sleep disruption. 89% of witnesses reported irregular sleep schedules, insomnia, or sleep disorders in the weeks leading up to their first encounter. Pattern 3. Geographic location. Certain areas have higher reports, often places with tragic histories, old buildings, hospitals, hotels, anywhere death has occurred frequently. Pattern 4. Time of night. 76% of encounters occur between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., the witching hour some call it, the time when the barrier between waking and sleeping is thinnest. Pattern 5. Medication changes. 43% of witnesses had recently started or stopped psychiatric medication. Pattern 6. Trauma anniversary. Many witnesses report their first encounter occurring around the anniversary of a traumatic event, even if they weren't consciously thinking about it. These patterns suggest the Hat Man is opportunistic. He appears when we're at our weakest, when our psychological defenses are down, when grief or stress or medication has made us vulnerable. Is he a predator? Or is he simply visible only when we're in certain states? Like a radio frequency we can only tune into under specific conditions. I don't know which possibility is more frightening. There's a theory circulating in the Hat Man communities online. It's fringe, it's wild, but it's gained traction among witnesses who have experienced multiple encounters. The theory goes like this. The Hat Man isn't a demon, entity, or hallucination. He's a collector. He harvests something from us during these encounters. Energy, memories, life force, people have different names for it, but the core idea is the same. He takes something, and the more often he appears, the more he takes. Rachel Morrison is the most vocal proponent of this theory. She's had 23 encounters over 5 years. "I'm not the same person I was before this started," she told me. "I've lost something, I can't quite explain what, but I feel diminished, like I'm a photocopy of myself, and with each encounter the image gets fainter. I've been to doctors, therapists. No one finds anything wrong, but I know something's missing. He's been taking it piece by piece." Rachel and others like her report similar symptoms: chronic fatigue, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, emotional numbness, depression. Now, these could all be explained by the trauma of repeated terrifying experiences. PTSD symptoms are well documented, but Rachel insists it's more than that. "After each encounter, I can feel it, like a part of me is gone. The other symptoms are just side effects of whatever he's taking." I asked Dr. Alina Price about this theory. She was skeptical but thoughtful. "Trauma can absolutely make people feel like they've lost part of themselves," she said. "And repeated sleep disruption causes all the symptoms these witnesses describe. But here's what I can't explain. Several witnesses have described feeling energized, vital, in the days leading up to an encounter, like they're being built up before being torn down. Why would trauma or sleep deprivation work that way? It wouldn't. So either they're misperceiving the pattern or something else is happening." Let me tell you about the Hat Man's variants, because he's not always alone, and he's not always wearing a fedora. There are reports of similar shadow figures with different hats: a top hat, a bowler, a wide-brimmed cowboy hat. Are these different entities, or is the Hat Man shape-shifting, adapting to cultural contexts? The witnesses don't know, but they all report the same core experience: overwhelming dread, paralysis, and the sense of being evaluated. The most frequently reported variant is what witnesses call the businessman. Same shadow figure, same height, but wearing what appears to be a suit and a more modern fedora. Some witnesses report seeing him with a briefcase. Others describe a tie. The businessman appears less frequently than the classic Hat Man, but his encounters are often described as more intense, more personal, like he's there on business, your business. Then there's the Old West figure, a shadow in a wide-brimmed Western-style hat, usually reported in the American Southwest. This variant sometimes appears outdoors, which is unusual for Hat Man encounters. Witnesses report seeing him on porches, in yards, standing in desert landscapes visible through windows. Is he adapting to regional expectations? Or are these completely different entities that happen to share characteristics? The most disturbing variant is what some witnesses call the accompany. The Hat Man appears, but he's not alone. There are other shadows with him, smaller ones. Witnesses describe them as children or animals. These encounters are rare, only 12 confirmed reports in my database, but all 12 witnesses describe them the same way: the Hat Man standing still while the smaller shadows move around him, circling, watching, waiting. One witness described it as a father with his students or a master with his apprentices. What are they learning? The witnesses don't want to know. The smell is a detail many witnesses mention but few researchers emphasize. But it's significant because hallucinations typically don't have consistent olfactory components across witnesses. Yet 62% of the witnesses I interviewed mentioned a smell, and they describe it the same way: old paper, burnt metal, decay, dust, ozone after a lightning strike. These aren't smells the human brain typically generates during hallucinations. They're specific, unusual, and consistent. Thomas Reed described it perfectly. It's like walking into an abandoned library that's been on fire, he said. Paper and smoke and something metallic underneath. And cold. The smell is cold, if that makes sense. It doesn't, but that's the only way to describe it. The smell has temperature. Other witnesses said the exact same thing. The smell is cold. How is that possible? How can a scent have temperature? I consulted with Dr. James Patterson, a neurologist specializing in olfactory hallucinations. Smells from hallucinations tend to be personally significant, he explained. Your brain pulls from memory, grandmother's perfume, childhood home, familiar foods. For multiple people to hallucinate the same unusual smell, burnt metal and old paper, that's extraordinary. It would suggest either cultural contamination, with witnesses reading others' descriptions and incorporating them into their own memories, or an actual smell, one that's genuinely present during encounters. But here's the detail that makes my skin crawl. Some witnesses report the smell lingers. After the paralysis ends, after the Hat Man disappears, the smell remains for minutes, sometimes hours. One witness, Marie Dumont, said her entire bedroom smelled like burnt metal for 3 days after an encounter. She opened windows, used air fresheners. Nothing worked. The smell just gradually faded on its own. Her husband confirmed it. He smelled it too. So if it's a hallucination, it's one that affects multiple people, or it's not a hallucination at all. The historical accounts are fascinating because the Hat Man, or entities very similar to him, appear in historical records going back centuries, long before sleep paralysis was a recognized phenomenon, long before the internet allowed for mass sharing of experiences. I found references in medieval texts, Victorian diaries, Native American oral histories. Different names, same description. An 1847 diary entry from a woman in England. The shadow man visited again last night. I could not move nor cry out. He wore his usual hat, broad-brimmed and dark. He stood at the foot of my bed for some time before departing as silently as he came. My maid found me this morning in a state of distress, though I cannot explain to her what transpired. Same experience, same entity, nearly 200 years ago. Native American oral histories from the Pacific Northwest describe a shadow with a wide hat that appears to people before major life changes, specifically before death. The stories say he's a psychopomp, a guide between worlds. Not evil, not good, just there to mark transitions, to prepare souls for what's coming. These stories predate European contact. They're ancient, and they describe the Hat Man perfectly. Medieval European texts mention the Dark Watcher in the broad hat. Some scholars dismiss these as fever dreams or religious visions, but the descriptions are too consistent, too specific. A tall shadow, a wide hat appearing in bedchambers, causing paralysis and fear. The same entity has been terrifying humans for at least 500 years, probably longer. We've given him different names, different explanations, but he remains constant, patient, watching. I need to tell you about the attempted communications, because some witnesses don't just passively experience the Hat Man. They try to interact, to ask questions, to demand answers. And sometimes, rarely, they get responses. Not words, never words, but impressions, feelings, images that appear in their mind. Let me be clear, This could all be the brain rationalizing a terrifying experience, creating meaning where there is none. But the consistency of these communications is unsettling. Gregory Walsh tried to speak to the Hat Man during his fifth encounter. He couldn't move his mouth, couldn't make sounds, but he thought the words as hard as he could. "What do you want?" The response was instant, not a voice, an overwhelming feeling of waiting, just waiting. It was like standing in an empty airport, Gregory told me. That feeling of anticipation, something's coming, something's arriving, but not yet, not quite yet. Samantha Cole asked, "Are you death?" The response she received was complex. Not yes, not no, more like adjacent. "He showed me an image," she said. "A doorway. He was standing to the side of it, not blocking it, not opening it, just there, marking it, making sure I knew where it was." I understood then. He's not death. He's death's herald, death's messenger. He comes before to prepare us, to mark us. The most disturbing communication came from David Park. During his seventh encounter, he mentally demanded, "Why me? Why do you keep coming back?" The Hat Man moved closer, closer than he'd ever been. And David felt something in his mind, not words, just pure meaning. And the meaning was this: because you asked. David had started researching the Hat Man obsessively after his first encounter, reading forums, watching videos, thinking about him constantly. And somehow that attention had made him visible, had drawn the Hat Man back again and again. "I called to him without knowing it," David whispered, "and he answered." The protection methods people have tried would fill a book. Crystals, prayers, salt circles, iron horseshoes, religious symbols, meditation, lucid dreaming techniques, sleep hygiene improvements, medication adjustments, therapy, exorcisms, and you know what? Some of them work, sometimes, for some people. But there's no consistency, no guaranteed method. What works for one witness fails for another, and sometimes nothing works at all. Religious protection is the most commonly attempted method. 34% of witnesses in my study tried prayer, holy water, blessed objects, or religious rituals. Of those, 41% reported a reduction or cessation of encounters. But here's the interesting part. It didn't matter which religion. Christian prayers worked for Christians. Buddhist mantras worked for Buddhists. Muslim prayers worked for Muslims. It's like the Hat Man respects belief itself, regardless of the specific doctrine. Or maybe belief gives people psychological armor that somehow manifests as real protection. The second most common method is light, sleeping with lights on, night lights, lamps, string lights. 52% of witnesses tried this. Of those, 28% reported success. The Hat Man is a shadow after all. Logically, he should be weakened or dispersed by light. But many witnesses report he appears even in lit rooms. The light doesn't seem to touch him. He exists independent of normal shadow physics. A few witnesses even reported that bright light makes encounters worse, more intense, like he's challenging their attempt to banish him. The method that shows the highest success rate, 67%, is also the strangest: acceptance. Witnesses who stopped fighting, stopped fearing, stopped trying to make him go away report that he either stops appearing or the encounters become less frightening. "I decided to stop resisting," one witness told me. "Next time he came, I just looked at him. Really looked. Tried to send him feelings of curiosity instead of fear. He stayed for maybe 5 seconds, then left. I haven't seen him since. Does fear feed him? Does resistance strengthen him? Or is acceptance just a coping mechanism that reduces the stress that triggers encounters? I don't have answers, just more questions." Now we reach the point where this investigation took a turn I never expected. Because while researching the Hat Man, I discovered something else. Something connected but separate. There are other entities, other shadow figures that appear during sleep paralysis. and some witnesses report seeing them alongside the Hat Man, as if he's part of a larger collective, a hierarchy, a family. The most commonly reported companion is called the hooded figure. Unlike the Hat Man's distinct fedora, this entity wears a hood that completely obscures any features. Witnesses describe it as more aggressive than the Hat Man. Where he watches, the hooded figure approaches. Where he's patient, it's urgent. And here's what's terrifying. 18 witnesses reported seeing both entities in the same encounter. The Hat Man standing still, the hooded figure circling, like they're working together, coordinating. Then there's the woman in white. She's rarer. Only 23 reports in my database, but witnesses describe her as the most disturbing of all. She appears luminous instead of dark, white dress, long hair covering her face, and unlike the others she speaks, or at least witnesses hear words, usually just their name, spoken in a voice they describe as wrong. Too many tones, too many pitches, like multiple voices speaking in unison but slightly out of sync. What's the connection between these entities? Are they different aspects of the same phenomenon, different species in the same ecosystem? Witnesses who have seen multiple types universally describe a hierarchy. The Hat Man seems to be in charge. The hooded figure is his subordinate. The woman in white is something else entirely, more powerful maybe, or just different. When the woman appeared, the Hat Man moved aside, one witness told me, like he was making room for her, showing respect or fear. The mass events are the most inexplicable phenomena in my research. These are instances where multiple people in the same location experience encounters on the same night. I've documented 14 such events. The largest involved 28 people. College dormitory. November 2020. 28 students, scattered across 3 floors, all experienced sleep paralysis between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. 19 of them reported seeing the Hat Man. 9 others saw different shadow entities. All on the same night. I interviewed 22 of the 28 students. None of them had discussed sleep paralysis before that night. Most had never experienced it before. But starting around 2:15 a.m., students began waking up paralyzed. Some texted friends immediately after regaining movement. The time stamps are consistent, the descriptions are consistent, and the fear was consistent. It felt coordinated, one student told me. Like something swept through the building, floor by floor, room by room. Systematically. What could cause this? Mass hysteria. But mass hysteria requires communication, suggestion, shared anxiety. These students were asleep in separate rooms. Environmental factors. Carbon monoxide can cause hallucinations. The building was tested. Levels were normal. Electromagnetic interference. Tested. Nothing unusual. Infrasound. Tested. Nothing. Every rational explanation was investigated and ruled out. What remains is disturbing. Either all 28 students independently hallucinated similar experiences at the same time, which is statistically improbable, or something actually moved through that building. Something that affects multiple people simultaneously. The second largest mass event occurred in a hospital. 13 patients on the same ward, all post-surgical, all on different pain medications, all experienced encounters on the same night. Hospital staff found it disturbing enough to file incident reports. I obtained copies. The reports are clinical and dry, but the underlying pattern is terrifying. Something visited that ward, went room to room, patient by patient, showing itself, making its presence known. Why? What purpose could it serve to terrorize recovering surgical patients? Or maybe terror isn't the goal. Maybe we're just terrified because we don't understand what's actually happening. I need to tell you about the aftermath, because seeing the Hat Man isn't a one-time event that you just move on from. It changes people permanently. I've documented significant psychological effects in 78% of witnesses. PTSD symptoms are common. chronic sleep problems, anxiety, depression, fear of the dark, fear of being alone, fear of sleep itself. Some witnesses develop elaborate bedtime rituals to feel safe. Others sleep with the TV on for the rest of their lives. A few can't sleep in bedrooms anymore. They sleep in living rooms, kitchens, anywhere but where the encounter occurred. But there are also positive changes. This sounds absurd, but hear me out. 23% of witnesses report increased spiritual awareness, a sense of connection to something beyond the material world. They're not happy they saw the Hat Man, but the experience shattered their purely materialist worldview, made them question reality. Some found that comforting. "I know there's more now," one witness told me. "I don't know what it is, but I know death isn't the end. I know consciousness exists beyond our bodies. The Hat Man proved it." Others develop obsessions, like me, frankly. They can't stop researching, reading, investigating. They join forums, start blogs, interview other witnesses, try to make sense of what happened. It becomes their life's work. "I need to understand," Catherine Moore told me. She's had 12 encounters over 8 years. "I can't just accept it and move on. I need to know what he is, why he came to me, what he wants. It consumes me. My husband thinks I'm losing it. Maybe I am, but I can't stop." The most tragic aftermath cases are the witnesses who develop severe paranoia. They believe the Hat Man is always watching, even when they're not paralyzed, even during the day. They see him in every shadow, every dark corner, every reflection in the periphery of their vision. 3 witnesses I interviewed are currently in psychiatric care. The line between genuine paranormal experience and paranoid delusion is thin, and prolonged exposure to the Hat Man seems to erode that line completely. Are they mentally ill, or are they accurately perceiving a reality the rest of us are blind to? I don't know anymore. The theories about what the Hat Man actually is are numerous and contradictory. Let me walk you through the main ones. Theory 1, mass hallucination. The Hat Man is a culturally transmitted hallucination. People read about him, hear about him, and their brains produce him during sleep paralysis. This explains the consistency. It's simple, it's rational, it fits known neuroscience. But it doesn't explain pre-internet sightings. It doesn't explain mass events. It doesn't explain witnesses who have never heard of him before seeing him. Theory 2, interdimensional entity. The Hat Man exists in a parallel dimension that sometimes intersects with ours. Sleep paralysis creates a state where we're partially in both dimensions simultaneously. That's when we can see him. This theory is popular in paranormal communities but has zero scientific support. Yet it does explain why he seems to exist outside normal physical laws, why light doesn't affect him, why he can appear to multiple people simultaneously in different locations. Theory 3, psychic projection. The Hat Man isn't external at all. He's a projection of our collective unconscious, a manifestation of our deepest fears about death and the unknown. Carl Jung would have loved this theory. It explains why he appears during times of stress and grief. Those are the moments when the unconscious mind is most active, when we're most vulnerable to our own psychic projections. But again, it doesn't explain the consistency across cultures and time periods. Theory 4, Death's Herald. This is the traditional interpretation. The Hat Man is a psychopomp, a death omen. He appears to people who are approaching the end of their life or a major life transition. He's not causing death. He's announcing it, preparing witnesses. This theory is the most frightening because it implies prediction, fate, destiny. If this theory is correct, then every witness is marked. Their time is coming. The Hat Man is just giving them advance notice. And honestly, the pattern of deaths following encounters supports this theory more than I'm comfortable admitting. I want to tell you about my second encounter, because after experiencing the Hat Man in that Louisiana hotel, I thought maybe it was one time, research-induced. a product of my primed expectations. I was wrong. He came to me again, 2 months later, in my own home, my own bedroom, the room where I sleep every night. I woke up at 3:13 a.m., paralyzed, and there he was, standing at the foot of my bed, exactly where hundreds of witnesses said he'd be. This time was different. The first time in the hotel, I was terrified but also clinically observing, taking mental notes, trying to remain objective. This time in my own space, there was no objectivity, just raw fear, primal, overwhelming fear, and something else. Recognition, like seeing an old acquaintance you can't quite place. Have I seen him before the hotel, before this research? I have vague memories, childhood, a tall shadow, a hat. Did I encounter him decades ago and forget? Or is my mind creating false memories to make sense of current experiences? I tried what Gregory Walsh tried. I thought the question, "What do you want from me?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Not words, not images, just feeling, pure, concentrated meaning flooding into my consciousness. And the meaning was, to show you. Show me what? I tried to ask, but the paralysis broke. He faded. I could move again. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and wrote down everything. Time, duration, details, but I couldn't write down the feeling. That sense of being on the edge of understanding, something profound and terrible. Since that second encounter, I haven't seen him again. It's been 4 months, but I feel different, changed, like something shifted inside me. I find myself noticing shadows in ways I never did before, paying attention to that moment between waking and sleeping, listening to the silence of 3 a.m. Am I becoming obsessed? Am I crossing from researcher into victim? I don't know. But I do know this: I'm waiting, just like he waits. For what? For the third encounter, for the next revelation, for the answer to show me what he wants me to see. The connection between the Hat Man and near-death experiences is something I only recently discovered. 7 witnesses who have had near-death experiences reported seeing a similar figure during their NDE. Not in their bedroom, not during sleep paralysis, but in that space between life and death, standing in the darkness, watching, waiting, just like always. Does the Hat Man exist in that transitional space? Is that his natural habitat? And sleep paralysis is just a crack in the wall that lets us glimpse him temporarily. Linda Patterson had a massive heart attack in 2018. She was clinically dead for 3 minutes. During those 3 minutes, she saw him. I was in darkness, she told me. Complete darkness, but I wasn't scared, not at first. Then I saw him, the Hat Man, standing in the distance. And I just knew he was waiting for me. If I kept going forward, I'd reach him. And that would be it, final, permanent, but I wasn't ready. So I turned back, or I was pulled back. I don't know which, but when I came to, when they resuscitated me, I could still see him, for just a second, in the corner of the emergency room, and then he was gone. This suggests something profound. If the Hat Man appears both during sleep paralysis and during near-death experiences, then maybe both states access the same space, the same reality. Sleep paralysis might be a temporary death, a practice run, and the Hat Man is there in both because he exists in that boundary space, the threshold between living and dying, between consciousness and unconsciousness, between here and whatever comes next. It would explain why he never speaks, why he only watches. He's not trying to communicate with us. We're trying to communicate with him. We're the ones crossing into his space. He's just there, doing what he always does, standing at the threshold, waiting for every single one of us, because we all have to cross eventually. And when we do, he'll be there, just like he always is, patient, eternal, watching. I need to tell you about the predictive encounters. These are the cases that terrify me most, because they suggest the Hat Man isn't just observing, he's forecasting, warning, preparing. 11 witnesses reported seeing the Hat Man before major disasters, not personal tragedies, large-scale events, and their accounts are disturbingly similar. They describe the encounter as different, more urgent, more intense, and they report receiving impressions, feelings, images of what's coming. Rebecca Hall saw the Hat Man 3 days before the 2011 Joplin tornado. She's not from Joplin. She lived 3 states away. But during the encounter, she felt overwhelming dread and saw images of destruction. I didn't understand what it meant, she told me. I just knew something terrible was going to happen, something big. When I saw the news about Joplin, I recognized what he'd shown me. The devastation, the darkness. It was like he was giving me advance warning. But warning me about what? I wasn't there. I wasn't in danger. Why show me? 4 witnesses reported similar encounters before the 2020 pandemic began. December 2019 and January 2020, before anyone knew what was coming. They described the Hat Man appearing repeatedly, multiple nights in a row, and the feeling of pressure, impending doom. It was like he was trying to tell me to prepare, one witness said. For what, I didn't know. I just felt this overwhelming need to get ready for something. Stock up, prepare. And then COVID hit, and I realized he was warning me, preparing me. But why? Why me specifically? I'm nobody special. If these accounts are accurate, and I have no reason to doubt these witnesses' sincerity, then the Hat Man has some form of precognition. He knows what's coming. Major tragedies, mass death events, and he appears to certain people before they happen, not to everyone, just to a select few. Why? What makes these witnesses special? What's the criteria for receiving these warnings? And most importantly, what's he warning about next? Because if the pattern holds, if he continues to appear before major disasters, then his recent increase in sightings might mean something terrible is approaching. Something big. Something we're not prepared for. We're approaching the end of this investigation, and I need to tell you the truth, the real truth, not the scientific explanations, not the rational theories, but what I've come to believe after 6 months of research, hundreds of interviews, and 2 personal encounters. I believe the Hat Man is real, not a hallucination, not a cultural phenomenon. Real. An entity that exists in a space adjacent to our reality, and I believe he serves a purpose. That purpose, I think he's a marker, a boundary keeper. He exists at the threshold between waking and sleeping, living and dying, knowing and unknowing. When we experience sleep paralysis, we're temporarily in his space, the space between. And he's there because that's where he's always been, where he always will be. He doesn't cause harm. He doesn't prevent it. He simply witnesses, marks, acknowledges, you've been here. You've touched the boundary. You've seen what lies beyond the veil of normal consciousness. And I believe he appears more frequently now because more people are crossing that boundary. Whether through stress, medication, trauma, or the collective anxiety of our current era, we're all dancing closer to the edge, closer to his threshold. And so more of us see him, not because he's more active, but because we're more available, more open, more vulnerable to perceiving what was always there. The deaths that follow encounters, I don't think he causes them, I think he sees them coming. He exists outside time the way we experience it. Past, present, and future are simultaneous to him. When he appears to someone, he's not announcing their doom. He's acknowledging what he already knows, what's already written. And maybe, just maybe, he's giving them time to prepare, to make peace. To say goodbye, that's not malice, that's mercy. Terrible, frightening mercy. From an entity that understands death in ways we never can. So what should you do if you see the Hat Man? First, don't panic. I know that's easier said than done. When you're paralyzed and he's standing in your room, panic is the natural response. But try to breathe, try to stay calm. Remember that thousands of people have survived these encounters. You will too. The paralysis will pass, usually within 30 seconds. It feels like forever, but it's not. Second, observe. If you can maintain any level of calm, try to notice details. What is he doing? Where is he standing? Is he moving? Does he communicate anything? These details matter. They might help you understand why he appeared to you. What message, if any, he's trying to convey. I know this sounds absurd when you're terrified, but information is power. Understanding reduces fear. Third, after the encounter ends, write everything down. Immediately. Time, location, details, feelings, any impressions you received. Your memory will start to fade within hours. The sharp terror will dull. Your brain will try to rationalize it away. Don't let it. Document everything while it's fresh. Not because you need to prove it to anyone, but because patterns emerge over time. If he appears again, you'll want to compare encounters. Look for progression, changes, evolution. Fourth, take care of yourself. The Hat Man encounter is traumatic. Don't minimize it. Don't let anyone tell you it was just a dream or just sleep paralysis. Whether he's real or not doesn't matter to your psychological state. The fear was real. The experience was real. Its impact on you is real. Talk to someone, a therapist preferably, or join the online communities. Connect with other witnesses. You're not alone. You've never been alone. Thousands of us have seen him. Thousands more will see him. We understand, we believe you, and we're here. It's 3 a.m. as I write this final section. I'm in my bedroom, the same bedroom where I saw him 2 months ago. I'm not paralyzed, not sleeping, but I can feel him, that presence, that awareness, like being watched by something just beyond perception. Is he here now, waiting in the shadows I can't quite see into, or am I just paranoid, traumatized, creating patterns where none exist? The truth is, I don't know anymore. 6 months ago, I started this investigation as a skeptic, looking for rational explanations, determined to debunk the Hat Man phenomenon through rigorous research and logic. But the data doesn't support debunking. The patterns are too consistent, the witnesses too credible, the experiences too similar across too many variables. Something is happening. Whether it's paranormal, psychological, neurological, or something we don't have words for yet, something is definitely happening. And I've realized something that changes everything. The Hat Man doesn't need us to believe in him. He doesn't need our fear or our acknowledgement or our understanding. He exists independent of our perception. We're the ones who need to make sense of him, to categorize him, to explain him. He just is, and he'll continue to be, long after this video, long after we're all gone, standing at the threshold, waiting, watching, patient. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for believing, for taking this journey with me. Whether you've seen the Hat Man yourself or you're just fascinated by the mystery, you're part of this now. Part of the collective attempt to understand something that might be fundamentally beyond understanding. Stay safe, stay aware. And if you wake up paralyzed at 3 a.m. and see a tall shadow and a wide-brimmed hat standing in your room, remember, you're not alone. Thousands of us have been where you are. Thousands of us know what you're seeing, and thousands of us are still trying to figure out what it means. Sweet dreams, and whatever you do, don't look in the corner when you're falling asleep tonight. Because if you really look into those shadows, you might see him looking back. And once you see him, once you really see him, he'll know. He always knows, and he might just decide it's your turn.